What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me for another video. I'm your host, Smiley, and I thought I'd go ahead and drop a Masters 1 preview in anticipation of the Valorant Champions Stage 1 tournament starting this weekend. Let's jump right into it. So for those of you who aren't aware, Valorant holds tournaments throughout the year called Masters tournaments where the best teams from each region come together and fight for the world title. This year's Masters tournament is held in Reykjavik, Iceland. As you can see on your screen, here are the 12 teams that are going to be competing at this Masters tournament. We're going to go through each team by region. We're going to break down some strengths, some weaknesses, what players to watch out for, and we're going to list the teams out based on how well we think they're going to do. This tournament is going to be a lot of fun for a lot of different reasons. For starters, we're going to see a new international champion crowned. All three of the champions from last year did not qualify for this tournament. Sentinels failed to qualify for the first tournament since winning it all last year. M3C, who won Masters 3 last year, failed to qualify. And Ascend, the champions for the whole year last year, they didn't make it either. We are really going to witness a new changing of the guard, no pun intended. We're going to start with the best region, EMEA. They have 3 slots and 3 representatives here at the international tournament. The first representative is G2 Esports. This team is a lot of fun, but G2 faithful fans know how hard the journey has been to get to this point. Those of you who just started watching G2 might have seen an absolutely incredible, spectacular, explosive team, but it was not always like that. There were a lot of roster changes, people coming and going, a lot of people taking off the bench, just an absolute really management disaster, frankly, and somehow at the last moment, at the 11th hour, the team has just come together. They found their identity, they found their purpose, and this team is incredible to watch. The player to watch out for most on G2 is this guy right here, Nuki. He is the in-game leader, and he is probably the best Raze in the world. Many of you who are watching the qualifiers saw that absolutely bonkers play he made, the mid-air blast pack headshot. Nuts. This guy is the truth. This guy is probably a top 10 in the world, all right? Keep an eye on this guy. G2 will need him to come through big for him. Side note, Avova, best controller in the world. Write it down. Write it down. Remember I said this. Avova, best controller in the world. You'll see. You'll see. It has been a long time since this could be said about G2. We're going to go ahead and put G2 right at the top. I have G2 as favorites. Not necessarily the absolute top of the favorites, but anybody who wants to win Masters is going to have to beat G2. The second EMEA slot goes to Fnatic. Fnatic is a fun team to watch. They were a little bit hot and cold last year. They made it to the finals of the first international tournament, Masters 2, where they lost to Sentinels. They didn't even qualify for Masters 3, and they lost out in Champions in the playoffs to Crew Esports, a team we're going to take a look at in a little bit. Fnatic has had some roster issues over the past week or so. One of the players who qualified with them got dropped from the roster, but that is less important news as the news that their star player may not actually get to compete at this tournament. According to the team's social media account, Durka may have contracted COVID or some related illness that prevented him from traveling to Iceland with the team. It's unclear whether or not he still might be able to make it in time for the tournament, but you best believe that Fnatic is a completely different team without their star player. My understanding as of this current moment is that Durka is not going to be playing with Fnatic at the Masters tournament. It is a huge blow. Honestly, I'm going to put Fnatic at the dark horses at best. With Durka at the helm, they're contenders. They might even be favorites. They might even be favorites. Certainly contenders. Without him, we're going to leave him at the dark horses slot. The last EMEA slot falls to Team Liquid. I say it falls to Team Liquid because, interestingly enough, Team Liquid actually failed to qualify for this tournament. But the original team that had their spot, FPX, actually was unable to field a full roster for the tournament, so Team Liquid went ahead and stood in. Team Liquid really is a team that is very fun to watch. They have very strong players, very strong fundamentals. However, the current meta has not favored their team. The current meta favors Jet players. It just is. You need a Jet player. And unfortunately, none of the players on the Team Liquid roster are true Jet players. There's 2 players that can kind of fill in for the Jet role, but none of them are really cut out for the role. They prefer other positions and other agents. I think that's hurt them a lot. And they're going to have to find an answer to that question, because without a true Jet player on the roster, you are going to lose to teams who do have the Jet. The player to watch out for on Team Liquid is none other than Scream himself. They call him the headshot machine. Very, very flashy player, but the current meta has pushed him off a lot of the flashy characters that he likes to play. Typically, he is one of the best Reynas in the world. Can't really play Reyna. He has to play Sage, which he's good at, or Skye. He is the one who's been flexed into the Jet position, and while he does a serviceable job, again, there just is a little bit missing in the way he plays that unfortunately will lose out to other Jet mains. Keep an eye on Scream, though. He's sure to put on a show for you. And of course, far be it from me to disrespect a prestigious organization like Team Liquid. However, let me draw your attention once again to the fact that they did not actually qualify for this event. They are standing in for someone who did. As such, I don't see them being ranked higher than Dark Horse. They certainly can. They certainly can go farther than that. But until I see it, I'm not believing it. The next region is North America. A new challenger has appeared. The Guard, ladies and gentlemen. Remember the name. The Guard. These kids are here to stay. This is a fun team to watch. When a team like the Guard is going to these tournaments and doing what they're doing, Valorant competitive scene is in a great spot. This is a team who has its fundamentals completely nailed down. Every player at every role knows exactly what they need to do, where they need to be, who needs assistance where, and every single one of the players on this team can clutch. The clutch can come from anywhere. Sure, there's some more flashy players than others, but the pure output of value that these guys create is astonishing. It is actually flawless Valorant. It's worth noting all 5 players on this roster are players to watch. The player that everyone is going to make notice of, though, is Trent. Trent tends to play the initiator. Keep an eye on the value he creates when he's not engaging in duels, in fights. The information he gathers, the clearing he's able to create. This guy is nuts. This guy may be the #1 player in North America. And in case it wasn't obvious enough from the excitement in my voice and how much I'm talking these guys up, I'm going to go ahead and place these guys in the favorites tier. And I know some of y'all immediately, whoa, this is their first international tournament. You were ranking them way too high. Perhaps, but if you've been watching this team since the North America Open qualifiers, you would know that the hype is real. Watch their games and you'll see. The second and final North America representative is none other than Optic Gaming. This team is very high-octane gameplay. They are solid at every position, and by all means, they should have accomplished a lot in their time as a Valorant professional team. They made it to the final of Masters 3 last year and got blown out by M3C. Optic Gaming also seems to have these really statement wins against other North American teams, but they just keep coming up short on the international level. They lost to X10 in the playoffs of Champions last year. It's a very unpredictable team. They actually beat the Guard in the North America region to send the Guard to the lower bracket, which the Guard then won through. The Guard played Optic again for the grand finals and then beat Optic. This team is very high octane, like I said, but there's no telling what version of this team is going to show up on any given day. The player to watch on Optic Gaming is none other than Ye. They call him El Diablo. He's the Jet player. Like I mentioned before, every team needs a solid Jet player, and this guy fills that role for him. Again, no telling what version of this guy's going to show up on any given day. It's difficult to put Optic on any one tier here. I mean, on their best day, Optic could win the whole thing, not even break a sweat. On their worst day, they're going to go crashing out of the tournament with their tail between their legs, as they've done multiple times before. We're going to go ahead and put them in the contender spot. We're going to leave the possibility for them to bring their A game for the tournament length. But we're also not going to discount the fact that they might just go out in a sad heap. Our next region slot goes to Latin America, and that is held by Crew Esports. If any of y'all watched Champions last year, they actually went on an absolute tear. I mean, it was hard not to get caught up in the momentum of this team. They beat Sentinels in the playoffs, then they went on to beat Fnatic in the next game, and then they lost an absolute heartbreaker to M3C in what was either a triple or quad overtime. It was impossible not to fall in love with these guys. Frankly, this is the team I'm going to be hoping to take it all the way. My player to watch out for on Crew Esports is none other than Kejnit. This guy is a ton of fun to watch. A very vocal player, but this guy is flashy, and this guy will hard carry his team. He will pick them up by the bootstraps. This guy actually played a tremendous role and maybe had one of the best hot streaks in all of Valorant competitive. Watch out for this guy. Now, Crew Esports, remember, last year, they were only one win away from going to the grand finals of the Champions tournament. And they have consistently shown up on these international tournaments. Is it finally time for them to peak? I sure hope so. They did go through a coaching change, but I'm going to go ahead and put these guys at contenders. These guys really can put it all together, and I think the meta highly favors them. Next up, from the Brazilian region, we have Team Loud. Team Loud's roster is made up mostly of players from Team Vikings, which was a Brazilian team that also was showing up to a lot of the Valorant Masters tournaments. They were consistently beating teams below them, but anytime they went up against a team above them, they were constantly getting smoked. They're kind of like the gatekeepers, if you will. Their closest encounter and shot at the top was against M3C, where they were up 12-5 on map and game point, where they then lost 9 straight rounds to lose the map, get blown out on the second map, and eventually lose that game against M3C. And we haven't seen them reach that height since. The player to watch out for on Team Loud for sure is going to be Saucy. This is the main man who often plays the Sova role to absolute perfection. Many consider him to be one of the best Sovas in the world. Keep an eye out for him. While this team has certainly come a long way, I'm afraid they are just not going to match up to the powerhouses from EMEA, NA, and even Crew Esports. I think the best these guys are going to get is a group stage exit, maybe one win depending on how their group is set up. From the APAC region, we have Paper Rex. Paper Rex has been on the international stage for almost every tournament. They certainly do a good job of sweeping through their domestic competition. However, as a general rule of thumb, the Asian regions have a hard time adapting to whatever the current meta is and current strategy calling. I don't see these guys making a very deep run. They do have a star player though. Forsaken. This guy is cracked. He is an actual human highlight reel. I mean, if you pull up his highlights, this man will actually tear through everybody. But is it going to be enough to match up with their dominant counterparts in the other regions? And again, while they may be cutting through their region with ease, I don't think they're going to have a lot of luck against some of these other stronger regions. I'm looking at a group stage exit for Paper Rex. The second APAC slot goes to Team Xerxia. These guys are based out of Thailand. Not a whole lot to be said about these guys, really. They do have Sushi Boys, who was on X10 previously, who was a solid contender team, the team that actually beat Team NV in Champions last year. But again, these guys were actually the number 2 in APAC after Paper Rex. Again, not a whole lot to say about these guys. They lost to Paper Rex in the finals of the regional. I think these guys are going to be one and done here. Representing Japan this time around, we have Zeta Division. The Japan spot is often traded between either Zeta Division or Team Crazy Raccoon. Frankly, I'm not so sure it matters. The Japanese region has consistently been the worst. No disrespect, they have been at the absolute bottom of the barrel for a number of different reasons. I think their mechanics aren't that great. I think the personnel choices are not too deep. And I think their adaptations of the meta are quite poor in regards to the other regions. I don't see this trend changing anytime soon. Zeta Division really is only there, in my opinion, because there has to be a representative for the Japanese region. I'm going to put them under F. Representing the Korean region, we have DRX, formerly known as Vision Strikers. These guys are a lot of fun to watch, but again, I'm afraid they fall under the same category as their other Asian region counterparts. They just don't adapt to the meta well, and overall, their skill level is not quite on par with the rest of the world. When watching this team play, make sure you're keeping an eye out on Buzz. This guy, in my opinion, is the pillar of the team. He's a very good fundamentalist, and look to see a lot of the success that DRX may have off the shoulders of this guy. For a team like DRX, having any success at this upcoming tournament would mean a lot, both for the organization and the region as a whole. Taking a look over my tier list, I want to make some adjustments based off of what I think DRX might do. We're going to go ahead and move DRX to the group stage exit slot. We're going to slide Loud up, only because if Loud finally peaks and can get over the hump, I think they can challenge anybody. We're going to move DRX to the front of the group stage exits because they may be able to qualify depending on how things go. And of course, last but not least, we have Ninjas in Pajamas. These guys made it in through the Latin America versus Brazil playoff qualifiers. They did actually beat a number of teams for that slot. However, they did lose to Loud to get knocked into that playoff tournament. We'll see what they can do. I'm afraid they are not going to get any higher than their counterpart Brazilian team Loud. I think for this final stop, I think Ninjas in Pajamas will be able to make a name for themselves. I don't think they're going to do much, but I don't think they're going to go crashing out. A team like that, I think, is very scrappy. They may be able to pull it out against some of the mid-level teams depending on their matchups. So there you have it, guys. Here's my tier list. We have G2 and the Guard as the favorites. We have Optic Gaming and Crew Esports as heavy contenders. We have some dark horses in Fnatic, Team Liquid, and Team Loud. Again, remember, Team Fnatic with Durka easily is up in here, so keep an eye on the news. We have DRX, Paper Rex, and Ninjas in Pajamas. Not doing a whole lot, but hopefully laying some groundwork for future attempts at the titles. And I'm afraid I'm looking at Xerxia and Zeta Division to not do a whole lot, but I would love to be surprised by one of these two teams. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Who are you looking for? Do you think I was wrong in any of my analysis of these teams? Let me know. But as always, I'm your host, Smiley. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.